I know a lot of us as creators bump into a lot of problems, roadblocks, issues when it comes to meeting our goals on YouTube. Roberto is certainly no exception to that, and today we want to show you guys his story and what he's bumping into and how he overcomes those things so you guys can too. Hey guys, my name is Tim Schmoyer and welcome to Video Creators here. We're just all about helping you guys grow your YouTube audience so you can spread a message that reaches people and changes their life. And I know it's a big part of what you do as well. Tell us, Roberto, about how you got started on YouTube.
So like a lot of creators, I came to the platform like fairly early on. But I didn't take it seriously. There was no such thing back in like 2006, I want to say. There was no such thing as being a YouTuber yet. That phrase hadn't been coined. So when I decided to actually do something serious with YouTube, I would say the first stab I took at it was a little bit in 2009, just testing out my camera gear and thinking about what I want to talk about. I was working as a graphic designer primarily at that time, and what I decided to do was talk about what I knew and my career and my profession, because I liked that. I liked the idea of sharing and giving people the same other opportunity to have a job and a career that I have. I had been doing, even in my corporate life, I did trainings on a regular basis. So I always had it in me to want to educate others and to give value and to give opportunity. I came to YouTube in 2013 as a freelancer and as an entrepreneur because I wanted other people to have the opportunity, whether they couldn't afford to go to college or they couldn't use a conventional, traditional method. I felt like, well, if you have a skill and it's a high value, technical, future-proof skill like graphic design or web design or coding or video production or editing or photography, well, you can make a living. I paid for college cash, Tim, partly because I was able to freelance. Thinking about that, if I could pass that skill on to even like a dozen other people, that's really all I was looking for. And it's not like, especially since traditional education didn't serve me as well as it has some other people, I was like, well, there are misfits like me, and a college isn't going to let me teach for misfits like me. I know that a lot of YouTube creators, like, they ask the question when you got your first 100 subscribers, first 1,000 subscribers. I have no idea, Tim, because when I started, that wasn't the culture of YouTube that I was going into, and that wasn't what my goal or agenda was. It was twofold. It was wanting to educate people, and it was by proxy of doing that and building my personal, professional brand. Hybrid of your personal brand, but also aligned to accomplishing your business goals. I wanted to get more clients, and I felt like if I showed them that I'm educated about this stuff and that I can do it if they're trying to do it themselves, like maybe they get frustrated and just hire me, and that worked. That happened. There are videos people used to razz me for because like it got like 1,000 views or 2,000 views, and unbeknownst to them, I got client work directly from that one video that made me like $5,000 that month. And that's even as a small creator, because I was using YouTube as a vehicle instead of as a destination. So that's how I went about it. When I came to YouTube, one of the most exciting things for me was I could throw all of my passions at one thing. And as like, a kid that like, ADHD, a kid who was a misfit throughout most of life, even as an adult, and was always accused of being a jack of all trades. This platform was intriguing because I could throw my skills at SEO and analytics and pattern recognition at the YouTube algorithm, which how much I love that. And then creatively, I could throw all my design and art and Photoshop skills at YouTube thumbnails and channel artwork and branding, and how much I love that. My video editing and photography skills, I could incorporate them. There's a good mesh of all of them, storytelling and the fact that I love to talk and run my mouth, and I can finally get paid for it. Now it's that I've had to embrace other things and other platforms that let me get very excited and challenged creatively while still being able to do the things that I like and that challenge me in YouTube. But I find in YouTube, incrementally, the challenge of it used to excite me more in the beginning than it does now. I see a lot of people, you've been through that.
Absolutely, I'm going through it right now.
So like I embraced Instagram hardcore, and you've seen me like
I see your ads all the time. I'm like, oh look, there he is again.
The final thing is that as an educator, and you're an educator also, is I found that you can bump up against the limitations of the YouTube platform as a teaching tool. It's really good for single serving lessons, but in terms of continuity and keeping people engaged to go from one video to another and for the lessons to stack and to be structured, and to be organized. Even when you use a playlist, there's still barriers there. And
Sure.
you know, there is still value in the structure that traditional education offers. YouTube doesn't necessarily provide a complete solution for that, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, it's not quite designed for that type of thing right now either.
Yeah.
So how are you overcoming that? What are you doing to address those types of things? And stuff
Well,
for that one?
so what I did was I decided I had to build my own online education platform. You've done things like that. Our friend Sunny Landruzzi has done things like that. Our friend Amish Matauer, Sean Canal, a lot of our friends have decided to take ownership of their own voice and platform.
Yep.
You and I have encouraged other YouTube creators to not rely on the platform to serve them and to use it as a tool, but that they should not limit themselves to a single tool. You know, if you only use a hammer, everything becomes a nail. So,
or everything just gets done really poorly.
that too.
Or both.
Or both. So what I did was I looked at the coaching services and things that I was providing. I looked at some products that I wanted to make. I looked at how that's different than my consulting business where I work with bigger brands and, you know, corporate clients. And then I decided to really flesh out a real business and platform around that called Awesome Creator Academy.
Yeah.
And so by doing that, I now got reinvigorated as a teacher. So I did that in 2017. It's grown. I couldn't be happier. It looks like it's on its way to being its own six-figure entity by itself. So
Good job, man.
It's sustainable.
Yeah, and the cool thing about that is what Roberto's done is what we talk about here on our, and you talk about as well, is like figure out what the value is of you're providing through your channel, and then put things together like create Awesome Academy that delivers
Awesome
like
Creator
10x,
Academy, yeah.
Awesome Creator, yeah, like 20x, 100x, or whatever that value in a format people are willing to pay for. And that's like now your channel, your content can become sustainable, even if you're serving like Roberto and I, relatively on YouTube as a whole, like the creator community is a pretty small niche.
Yeah.
You know, when you look at like gaming and vlogging and beauty and some of these other ones. So like we probably wouldn't be able to make it sustainable just on AdSense.
The other cool thing is when you own your own platform, and we talked about the struggles of the YouTube algorithm, and I know that's something that the audience probably feels the pain of regularly. Like even we bump up against like things in the algorithm. But here's an interesting challenge is when you and I make content for YouTube, in the back of our mind, no matter how hard we try, if it's YouTube content, we're thinking about the YouTube algorithm. We're thinking about titles, descriptions, tags, watch time, session loops, all the variables. And I feel like even if it's only by 10%, it's diluting some of our value of our content because we still feel shackled in some ways by the platform. We've done like hour-long training stuff on YouTube on our channels before, and it doesn't always perform the way that you would expect.
Yeah, sometimes it comes down to the title, thumbnails, and hooks. I mean, it can, but it's got to be really engaging.
But the
really
retention
valuable.
that I get on a webinar that I make people opt into via email.
Because, yeah, there's got to be some sort of commitment there, a little bit of a pain point that gets people to feel like, oh, I'm committed to this now. For creators who are going through difficulties on their channel and they're trying to overcome hardships, just like you did, just like I did, just like all of us, what advice would you give them of how they can overcome that?
I would say that you need a goal that is not YouTube specific itself, meaning that I want them to take a challenge of making like 30 or 100 videos that they think are good and are about this thing that they want to do or this thing that they want to serve, instead of thinking about how many views or whatever it gets. When I was growing up as an artist and a photographer, there was no Instagram. So the value of, because creators, you guys say this all the time, why would I make content if nobody's gonna watch it? Why would I make content if no one's engaging with it? I spent maybe the first 20-something years of my life creating content that like 5 people would see, and it was because I wanted to make it, and it was something that was for me. I still do photography that I never share with the world, but hangs in my house, and that's real to me, so you need a bigger goal.
Yeah, I feel like the goal needs to be oriented around a mission of some kind. Everyone starts at zero.
Everybody starts at zero.
You know?
And the thing is, everybody's looking for...
And then they look for an easy fix.
They're looking for an easy fix, like whether it's a shout out or something. Let's look, like real quick, anecdotally, let me make this very real for your audience real quick. Jacksepticeye and Sarah Dici, 2 completely different content creators who most people attribute their success to a bigger creator shouting them out. In the case of Jacksepticeye, PewDiePie shouted him out. Sarah Dici, Casey Neistat shouted him out. But guess what? PewDiePie shouted out a lot of people besides Jack, and they never blew up.
Right.
Casey shouted out a lot of people and they never blew up. In fact, Sarah's big shout out was technically her second shout out from Casey.
Yeah.
You know,
people assume that exposure is their problem, and it very rarely is.
but what those two creators have in common that I want to drive home for your audience is they were grinding and doing work well before they got those shout outs. And if they weren't doing quality work that those people felt aligned with their audience and that their audience would enjoy, they would have never got the shout out in the first place. Even if they did, the audience would have never responded to it for more than a day. That's real. And then if they didn't keep grinding and going.
I feel like you need to love creating more than you love popularity or recognition in order to keep going. Like if you're just going after popularity, you're gonna give up real fast.
I like almost literally broke down in tears when we were at Vid Summit. During like afterward with the Q&A where Gary Vee was doing his keynote, because somebody came up to me in the audience and was like, hey, you're Roberto Blake, and I'm like, yeah, and then it's like, and he said, thank you so much, and your content helped me, and I asked, how has it helped you? And he told me, well, and he was debating whether he was going to say anything, and he said, well, 6 months ago I was unemployed, now I have my own business, and it's already a 6-figure business in 6 months, and I like almost broke down into tears.
Awesome.
To know that I, in some way, like, and taking no credit because it's his work, you know, I want to make that very clear. But in some way, if I even motivated or inspired even just one person, and that was the transformation that happened in their life, then everything I've done has been worthwhile.
Any other advice for people who are just trying to overcome an obstacle or a barrier on their channel right now?
Stop comparing yourself to other people. It's one of the biggest barriers to your success. And the other biggest barrier that came directly, this was something I asked Gary Vaynerchuk. He answered this in episode 38 of the Ask Gary Vee show. I asked him, what's the biggest barrier to success, time or money? Because most YouTube creators will say they don't have the money to invest or they don't have the time to invest. And he told me something that's very real to me that I repeat to people to this very day, Tim.
The lack of optimism.
If you don't believe in something, if you don't have that glass half full mentality or glass all full mentality, it's like you're not going to do it. It's like it's a commitment and it's a leap of faith.
Yeah. If you guys want to check out Roberto's channel, there's a link to it down in the description below. Also an interactive card. Go check it out. What can they expect over there?
So you'll get a lot of content both on education, motivation, helping you build up your creative skills, and of course helping you create something awesome today.
Exclusive content coming to you from Roberto Blake of things he's never said before, ever, or just on your channel?
I think maybe I've said some of these in speaking engagements.
So this
Secret
is the
sauce.
behind the scenes of Roberto Blake's pro tips for how you grow your YouTube channel.